сейчас придешь, что ли? ушли.
Все это перемешиваем. Сейчас сюда кладем гранат. Тоже ровно столько же, сколько уже у нас всяких ингредиентов было. Значит, кстати, вы знаете лайфхак, как почистить гранат безболезненно, без всяких брызгов. Вы берете гранат. Ну, я, к сожалению, последний полезла. Ну, предположим, вот гранат, да. Вы делаете на нем сверху крестообразный надрез, снизу крестообразный надрез. И погружаете его в чашу с водой. Через полчаса, просто безболезненно, без всяких брызгов, без ничего, все это вот так вот, ягодка к ягодке, вы все это чистите. Итак, добавили сюда виноград, говорю, гранат.
A few of you have written me and asked me about breaking up chords into arpeggios using the left hand. I'd like to give you a few ideas and tips about this in this video. Let's start with the simplest case. Suppose you have the C chord in the left hand and you'd like to break it into an arpeggio. The easiest way to do this would be to omit the third and to double the root an octave above. So for example, suppose I have, you can do this by the way with any chord, say take G, omit the third and double the root, back to C. And you can do this with minor chords as well, let's say A minor, omit the third and double the root. By the way, A minor and A major would have the same arpeggio. So this arpeggio doesn't make any distinction between major and minor chords. Both major and minor chords will get the same arpeggio. So in a sense, this arpeggio loses a bit of the character of the chord itself. It just retains the bass and the fifth. Let's see how this fits into a melody. Let's take this simple melody. Which has the chords C, AM, EM, and F. Breaking this into arpeggios, I'd get this for the C, this for the AM, this for the EM, and this for the F. I might transpose them an octave above or below. For example, instead of doing this, I might end up doing this. So here's how it would sound with the chords and then with the arpeggios. Okay, let's try and complicate things a bit, because music is pretty dull when you repeat the same trick over and over again. And what we're going to do, remember that just a few moments ago I told you that this arpeggio doesn't make any distinction between a minor chord and a major chord. So the C major chord and the C minor chord
Блин, что-то вообще как-то... Подожди, где спишь? А? Не понял. Не понял, где пробуешь. Кстати, что так, что здесь серьезно?
would both get the same arpeggio, because I would be omitting the third and doubling the root. Now let's try to incorporate this third root back again into our arpeggio. What I'm going to do is I'm going to start with my chord. I'm going to take this third degree of the chord and I'm going to move it an octave up here. And now my arpeggio of the C chord would sound like this. So this is a C, a G and an E, and I'm using my fifth, second and first fingers to play it. And you can do this with any chord, major or minor. For example, let's take the A minor chord. It sounds a bit dark when I play it this low, but when I take this third degree, the middle one, and move it up an octave, you see this is a C and this is a C just an octave above it, it sounds just fine. So this is a C. Now for an AM. Let's see how the melody from before. So this is a C above it. It sounds just fine. So this is a C. Now for an AM. Let's see how the melody from before sounds with this arpeggio. So we have a C, an AM, an EM, and an F. The arpeggios for these chords using this new form would be I'd just like to stress again that the first arpeggio didn't make a distinction between minor and major. This one does. So if I take the C major chord, I'll get this arpeggio. And if I take the C minor chord, I'll get this arpeggio. So this is C minor, this is C major. Okay, now let's complicate things a little further. We saw two forms of arpeggios, the first and the second. Now, I've used this as my highest note and this. Let's look at the C major chord, just for an example. There's a note here in the middle that I didn't use. And I'm going to use it now, and actually, I'm going to use all three notes, the C, the D, and the E. And the idea is to get some motion into your arpeggio. So you might do something like this. Or maybe something like this. Theoretically speaking, what you're doing is you're using the first or maybe something like this. Theoretically speaking, what you're doing is you're using the first 3 notes of the scale that is used to build your chord. If this doesn't tell you anything, that's okay. There's no need to get theoretical. Just look at the first form and at the second form and try the notes in between, and just by ear try and find pleasing patterns. There isn't much choice. Usually it's this, the note that is 2 semitones above the root, that will fit in. Let's take another example. Let's look at the A minor, which has this as the first form and this as the second form, and it has this note in the middle. So you might do something like this, or maybe like this. And you can alternate between patterns. So if I had a C and then an A minor, I might do this on the C and this on the A minor. Just to add a bit of variety to your arpeggiation. Let's go back to the melody and see how it sounds with this new motion technique.
These are the 5 most common mistakes that I see in beginner composers when they are composing orchestral music. Number 1, using dry libraries. Don't use dry libraries. It's gonna take a lot of work and a ton of processing power for you to get them sounding like a real orchestra. You wanna use wet libraries that already sound like an orchestra performing in a hall or on a scoring stage. Number 2, using just the 1 CC at the same time to write dynamics for the libraries. A musician can do so many things, not just change volume and timbre. They can do so many things like vibrato. So you gotta use as many controllers as you can to emulate what a human could do with an instrument. Number 3, not narrowing down the panning a little bit. Yes, when we are using a wet library, the violins one already sound where they should sound, a little bit to the left. The cellos already sound a little bit to the right. But we want to close the panning a little bit because we're going to be stacking different instruments and it's going to take too much space. So it's good to just close a little bit the panning and then reposition it a little bit. Balance. I see many composers that are very good at music production that mess up the balance and the music is gonna automatically sound fake. Get this, the strings sound in the middle in terms of volume. The brass is always going to have more projection power, so it's going to sound louder, especially in forte passages. And woodwinds do not have that much projection power, so they're going to sound a little bit softer. And number 5, muddiness. There are certain things that are going to make your music sound muddy and lose clarity and definition. And there are things that are going to help your music to not sound muddy. The 3 most effective things that are going to help your music not sound muddy are going to be EQ, reverb, and orchestration. EQ. Make sure to EQ every track in your template. Just cut a little bit, around 2 to 350, 400 cycles. Just cut 1 to 3 dBs max. Find the annoying frequency and bring it down. It's not gonna make a big difference in each of the instruments. It's not gonna change the timbrical characteristics of that instrument. But when you put it all together, it's gonna be a meaningful change. The second one is reverbs. If you use the same reverb for the entire These are the 5 secrets to a cinematic mix. Number 1, use 2 reverbs instead of 1. Use a convolution reverb first to add a sense of room, of a space around your sound, even if you are using wet samples. And then add a whole reverb, a digital algorithmic reverb with the whole type of setting to add that extra layer and that long, nice decay type of reverb. Number 2, cut instead of adding. Let me explain. Sometimes we need an instrument to sound a little bit brighter, right? Sometimes we need to brighten the trumpets, for example. And we will go for the Q and reach that knob and add some high frequencies. Instead of doing that, cut some of the low frequencies, carve out some of those low frequencies, those annoying muddier frequencies, and by removing a little bit of those, the high frequencies will pop up. In general, mixing is more about shaping the sound rather than adding things to the sound. Number 3, do not reach for the EQ right away. Instead, try to add a little bit of analog saturation. Maybe it's the Waves J37 or the Kramer tape or the Studer A800, or maybe instead of going tape saturation, you're going for analog channel from Mac DSP. Sometimes inserting one of those plugins adds richness to the sound and adds subtleties that are going to add to the musicality of your instruments. Number 4, make space for the low frequencies. Generally, we tend to think epic music, cinematic music, lots of low end, and we start to adding low frequencies to all the low instruments, and that's just gonna create a mess of muddiness in the low end. Instead, what you wanna do is you wanna remove a little bit and carve out some of the low frequencies for most of the low instruments and select one that's the one that's gonna carry the low end weight, the one that's even going to go in the subsonic area, and then you're gonna work on that one to make it sound really low. But first we have to make a space in the low frequencies. So for example, if you've got double basses but you also have an electric bass, the electric bass is the one that's gonna carry the real low end. Double basses are there, is the lowest part of the orchestra, but it's not the one that's gonna carry the lowest end of the entire arrangement. And number 5, it's not about the plugins. It doesn't even matter which plugins you use. It's way more important to get the balance right, to position the instruments the right way, to automate the mix so it feels natural and organic and musical, than having the most expensive plugin. A trick that I like using, and I learned that from Dennis Sands, and doesn't require any plugin, and it works great for like long sustained type of notes, like sustained strings or harmonics. I call it fluctuation type of automation. It basically works as you put the finger on the fader and just move it quickly up and down, like half a dB up, half a dB down. It makes the sound feel more alive, and it doesn't require any plugin, and it makes a big difference. They do that even with live orchestras. It's just a long sustained note, just adding a little bit of that fluctuation, that type of vibration on top of the sound that makes it more interesting, makes it more musical. And finally, a bonus one, being able to mix your orchestral music is a great skill to have, but you have to understand that mixing is a process that's meant to elevate your music, if you will, to make it sound bigger, wider, more cinematic, but it's not meant to fix any composing problems. It can. Sometimes you will be fixing composing problems, but what you want to make sure is that when you're done composing, you export those stems or those tracks to start the mixing process. That music has to already sound good, and then start the mixing process to elevate, to widen, to gain a little bit of clarity, to make it sound more cinematic. But if it already sounds good, the mixing process is gonna be much easier and you're gonna get more out of your music. I'd love to share more tips like this with you, but unfortunately I can't in this ad. But if you want more tricks like this, here's what you're gonna do. It's free. First, click the button down below. It'll go to the Dennis Sands Mixing for Composers course. You'll see this page. You don't need to buy the course. You just scroll down a little bit. You will see this section, demo the course, what's inside the course. Click on the picture or on the button. It will ask for your name and email. Just put your
One final thing I'd like to talk about is inversions of arpeggios. And we talked about inverting a chord. So if you don't remember what this means, just go back to piano lesson number 1 and review the material. But basically it means that if you take the root form of a chord, you can take the root an octave up and get the first inversion. Then you can take the next note in line, in this case of a C major and E, put it an octave up and get the second inversion, and do it again. Take your lowest note, put it an octave up and get the third inversion, which is actually back to the root. So you have the root, first inversion, second inversion, and root again. And you could do the same thing with an arpeggio, only this time you'll be moving things 2 octaves. at a time. So, and we'll be working with the second form of the arpeggio. So this is the C major chord. Sounds a bit muddy down there. This is its second form of arpeggio. Yeah, so I took this E and I put it an octave above. Now I can take my lowest note and put it one octave up and another one. So I get this form, which is the first inversion of my arpeggio. Still a C chord. I can repeat this trick and take my lowest note, put it up an octave and another octave, and I get this form. So now it's this. And do it once again. Take my lowest note, up 2 octaves, and get back to my original form. So this is the form that I started out with, only 2 octaves higher. So this basically shows you how to play an arpeggio without having to have the root note as the lowest note. Why is this useful? Well, it simply helps you move the harmony more smoothly along. So we talked about voice leading in some of our previous lessons, and this is also a form of voice leading. And I'll give you an exercise to work on. I'm going to take 3 chords, a C, an F, and a G. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to play the arpeggios in an ascending order, moving my lowest note notes of the C major scale. So without delving into the theory, I'll just show you what I mean. And your exercise is simply look at these arpeggios. This is 1, 2, 7, and 8, and identify which chord was used for each arpeggio. So for example, 1, 2, let's look at number 3. So number 3, you can sort of reverse engineer it by moving things around in octaves. So you take this one and move it up an octave, and I see that I actually have a C major chord. And this is simply this number 3, which chord was used for each arpeggio. So for example, 1, 2, let's look at number 3. So for example, 1, 2, let's look at number 3. So number 3, you can sort of reverse engineer it by moving things around in octaves. So you take this major chord, and this is simply the first inversion of my C major arpeggio. This is my basic C major arpeggio. I'm sorry, this is my second inversion. So this is my basic C major arpeggio. Taking this up here gives me my first inversion. Taking this up here gives me my second inversion. So this third chord in the sequence that I showed you, this third arpeggio corresponds to the C major chord. And it's your job, as part of this exercise, to identify the chords used for each arpeggio. That's it. I hope you have fun. See you next lesson.
где проводая мы